Mayahia, Aguijuna Ota Wayunkerra. Un pequeño saludo en mi lengua tradicional, el Wayuneki. I just want to thanks very much Heather Evans for this invitation, and also, of course, all the students from the gender studies class. I want to introduce myself. My name is Karmen Ramírez Boscán. My traditional name is Wayunkerra. I'm coming from the Wayu Indigenous Peoples community from Colombia, and actually I'm working very close with the Alianza de Mujeres Indígenas por la CEDAW, the Indigenous Alliance, the Indigenous Women's Alliance for CEDAW. I want to talk a little bit about this process that started, I think, with the organization in conjunction with the Women's Human Rights Institute and La Fuerza de Mujeres Wayu. We organized in 2012 the first CEDAW Week on Indigenous Women, and in Colombia we started to draft, after this process, the first shadow report written and thought by Indigenous women to submit under CEDAW, and we finally submitted this shadow report in 2013 under the CEDAW committee. After the process started in Colombia, a new CEDAW week took place in Guatemala, and the Indigenous women in Guatemala ended with a very relevant result. It was to call the CEDAW committee to adopt a general recommendation on Indigenous women. This initiative was born in Guatemala to strengthen the rights of Indigenous women, and we consider definitely is a very, very relevant experience, because we believe that the CEDAW committee or the CEDAW convention should particularly address some issues that are definitely violating human rights of Indigenous women. For example, racism and discrimination experienced by Indigenous women, as well as the CEDAW Convention should address the relationship between collective rights and Indigenous peoples and our rights as Indigenous women. The main points since my personal perspective that are included in this general recommendation are issues to eradicate racist stereotypes. I think this is one of the issues we Indigenous women have to face always, and we need to make further visible how discrimination, which is dramatically experienced by Indigenous women, leads to inequality. Other of the issues that personally I think is very important is the protection of traditional knowledge from the perspective of Indigenous women. And the most relevant point, or the most relevant issue we discussed about the impacts we expect with the adoption of the general recommendation on Indigenous women is states' accountability, as they are responsible of racism and violence against Indigenous women, imposing and perpetrating, for example, practice like colonialism. States should recognize that all these kind of subordination of Indigenous women is due to these mechanisms of oppression imposed on Indigenous women. So in this regards, I just want to highlight why we have decided to participate at this level, and we consider that Indigenous women can participate at all levels. At the United Nations system, there are some special procedures focused on Indigenous women, like the mechanism on the rights of Indigenous, on the issues of Indigenous people's rights. There are already existing and special rapporteur on Indigenous peoples, but all these issues are always very much more focused on the generality, but not in particular issues regarding Indigenous women. So we consider that our participation not only in the special procedures created by the UN system for Indigenous peoples are the only ones that we have to use. So we are trying to combine other special procedures, and we are trying to combine some other ways to try to call further attention to the situation of the Indigenous women's rights. I just want to finish this short intervention to let you know that we need you to commit with us. As students, you have a very powerful opportunity to support us. La Alianza de Mujeres Indígenas para la CEDAW needs you to support our global campaign to call on the CEDAW committee to adopt a new general recommendation, the general recommendation on Indigenous women. And we invite you also to sign our petition. We have a petition on ABAS, and I will be sure that Heather can share with you this petition. And please don't go out after this intervention or after this lecture to without signing this petition. It's really, really very important for Indigenous women around the world, and we need you to take this step to the other step. We need you also. I want to invite you to write about this experience, to follow up this experience, because it's going to, I'm pretty sure it's going to make history for the respect of the rights of Indigenous people. So I invite you to work with us to stop violence against Indigenous women and discrimination against Indigenous women, and I invite you to work with us to stop violence against Mother Earth. Thank you, and all my love from my heart, and my spirit is with you. Thank you very much.